There we go. We're now live in several places. Good morning to each and every one of you. It is Friday, woo, August 8th, 8 2025. Morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Mornings with Mova, where authenticity lives and thrives to create a space of growth, healing, and joy. I am your host, Andrea Lawful Sanders, and each day we will cover the topics that are informative and engaging while learning from each other. Good morning, Bobby Carr. You vacillate between YouTube and Facebook. I see you. It is Friday, August 8th, 2025. The year is just humming along, and there's so many things that I'd like to discuss with you today. We're going to cover a little bit of news, but we do have a guest. We have a guest, and this guest is all at once intriguing, thoughtful, and will make you think things in a different way. I love highly intelligent people, and he is one of the most emotionally intelligent people I have met in my lifetime. And so I've always said to you, follow your gut instinct, look to see what's going on around you. This person and I are going to have a great conversation this morning that'll keep you on the edge of your seats. I cannot wait to have the dialogue with him. In the meantime, there are things that are going on that I wanted to discuss with you. So yesterday, I posted something on social media that I'm going to read to you that has then led to a conversation with folks that I did not know were dealing with this. Now, there has been news reports that 318,000 Black women have lost their jobs since January of 2025, from February to May, something like that. And there are even more. And so one of my siblings posted something in our group chat, and I put it on my Facebook page because I wanted to see what the thoughts were around it. So, and this is about a Black man. And a laid off Accenture manager has been job hunting for 21 months. Recruiters keep telling him he is too expensive, by Joseph Zinkula. This was written by the Business Insider 7 hours ago. Well, that was 7 hours ago, 24 hours ago. So Alexander Vallon has struggled to find a job after being laid off from Accenture in 2023. He said it has been challenging to find roles that wouldn't require a significant pay cut. Some U.S. businesses have slowed hiring and taken steps to reduce the number of managers. Alexander Vallon thought his more than 2 decades of experience in the tech industry would help him find a job, but he said it sometimes feels like a disadvantage. In November of 2023, Vallon was laid off from his project manager role at the consulting firm Accenture, where he said he managed up to 150 developers, architects, and software testers, depending on the project. Over the past 21 months, Vallon says he has had more than 24 interviews, but hasn't been able to land a job. He and his wife, a stay-at-home mom, have relied on DoorDash earnings, unemployment benefits, and family support, but it hasn't been enough, and Vallon said they have fallen behind on their mortgage payments. More recently, it's just dead. I don't hear anything, Vallon, who is 51 and lives in Florida, said of his job applications. It's like a black hole, and I don't know what's going on. Excuse me. In recent months, Vallon said even landing interviews has become a challenge. The end of his Accenture tenure and his conversations with recruiters have led him to draw one conclusion. It's a particularly tough job market for workers with a lot of experience and corresponding pay experience. Oh, good morning, G. Lamar Stewart. Good morning, sweetie pie. You got to come see Uncle. The first thing recruiters say when they see my profile is it's very expensive, he said. Vallon's experience reflects a broader shift in the U.S. labor market that's made it more difficult for workers in managerial positions to find jobs. Several corporations, including Microsoft, Google, Intel, Amazon, and Walmart, have announced plans to reduce the number of managers. And it's not just big businesses. Gusto, a small and mid-sized payroll and benefits platform, found that manager firings and layoffs have risen 66% between January 2022 and September 2024 for those ages 45 to 54, and more than 400% for those ages 35 to 44. This trend, dubbed the Great Flattening, reflects a broader push to reduce costs and bureaucracy, moves business leaders say will make their organizations more efficient, but for some laid off managers, finding new employment has been far from easy. Amid economic uncertainty, raising from tariffs to the early impacts of AI adoption, U.S. businesses are hiring at nearly the slowest pace in more than a decade. Good morning, Jana Malice. Business Insider has heard from hundreds of Americans over the past year who are struggling to find work as U.S. businesses slow hiring and flatten management structures. Share your story by filling out this quick form. So someone wrote, I'm a 53-year-old middle manager who can't find a job. I burned through my savings and even resorted to selling plasma. This market is a black hole. A boomer moved to Panama so that her retirement would be more affordable. Now she's struggling to find a job and her dream is slipping away. From 6 figures to $25 an hour. These struggling job seekers are settling for lower paying jobs to pay the bills. Job searching in 2025, it's a mess no matter how old you are. This is crazy, y'all. Struggling to find jobs at this pay level throughout his final year on the job, Valens said he noticed a shift. Clients were requesting lower cost workers, and he spent as long as 2 months on the bench, meaning he wasn't assigned to any client properties. Since being laid off, Valens' pay level has continued to feel like a barrier. His Accenture job paid about $87 an hour, and he said he's targeted roles that pay between $65 and $85 an hour, or roughly $135,000 to $177,000 annually. But the current hiring landscape, some recruiters have told him that his compensation level is too steep for their clients. It's left Valens struggling to find openings where there's demand for someone with his experience and salary expectations. I applied for one job and they're like, we're going to have to pay you $35 an hour. That's really, really low. Valens said he decided to stay in the running for the role, but didn't get an interview. While he's willing to stray a bit from his target compensation range, he said he doesn't want to go below $50 an hour, about $104,000 annually. A competitive job market has him exploring other options over the last few months. Valens said his job search has been particularly frustrating. When he manages to find a job posting that seems like a good fit, there are often already hundreds of applicants, making his chances of landing the role feel slim. He even went so far as to apply for a managerial role at a Chick-fil-A. And so I read all of that because there's something happening. And it's been happening, and folks have been really quiet up until quite recently when Doge came in and began cutting federal jobs, where a lot of Black women particularly have had, and it's been their space where they have been able to go on vacation, they've made good money, and so these jobs are being cut, and as they're applying for jobs, they can't find anything commensurate to what they have had before. And so they're in these houses, they've got these cars, they've got these car loans, they've got mortgages, they've got children, some people have spouses, some people do not. But what is happening is these Black women are finding themselves in oh my God, I'm wearing 2 watches. This is how, okay, we'll talk about that. Let me take off one of them. That's so crazy. Black women are finding themselves now having to pivot and taking roles and reimagining themselves. One of the folks that came on my page yesterday was one of my sisters who said that she was in a leading management role in Jamaica for an intercom phone company, and she was doing really well. And then they began laying folks off and gave them a book called Who Moved My Cheese. She said she got the book and began searching. Nowhere that she had gone, she couldn't find any jobs that were helping her to make the kinds of money that she was making. She migrated here with her husband, and she went from being a middle manager, managing several clients around different countries, to now working in construction. right, where she's doing sales. And she said, had she not gotten outside of herself, because for a couple of years she was like, I need to make this kind of money. I don't know how I'm going to navigate. And she had to figure out that she had to completely pivot and start all over again. She said it was incredibly humbling. And I remember because as a family, we all pulled together to make sure that she was okay in the midst of what was an incredibly dark time. Some people don't have that though. Some people don't have family members who are able to do what needs to be done to make sure that they can be okay. As a direct result, now she is and having to pivot and doing what she's doing, and working with her husband, they've been able to pull themselves back up, but it has not been easy. So she was able to write on my page and share with people, it's a thing. It's going to continue to happen. And what is also even more important is that there are people, Black women have been the leading force of making sure that the country turns, because as they were making their money, they were going to the to Martha's of the Vineyards. They were going to this place and that place. They were able to buy big homes and buy the kinds of cars that they wanted to, et cetera, et cetera. You have all heard me say this 1,000 times. It's okay to live beneath your means. It really is, because you never know what's coming down the pike. Just because you have it in the moment, especially now, for those of you who continue to have jobs and are working, and I say, stop, I'm begging you, I start to live completely. Just because you can afford to go X, Y, and Z, or afford to go on this vacation, I'm asking you now, and this is just me talking, to kind of step back a little bit and say, I don't know if I'm going to be next. You see the handwriting on the wall. You cannot be blind, deaf, tone deaf, and just acting as if this can't happen to you. Because as you see with this man that's been on for 20 plus years, nothing is promised anymore. There are no jobs out here that are promised where you say, I have been loyal to the company and the company will be loyal to me. Yesterday morning, David Alexander Jenkins and I read a whole piece about the CEO of AT&T saying that those days are over. We don't need you. If you don't want to work, go find somewhere else. We're cutting back. There's no loyalty in companies. So we're navigating now in this new space and trying to figure out what it will look like for many, many, many of us. As we saw what was coming down the pike in this election, I started saying to the people in my crew, if you have the wherewithal to pay off your car loans, or pay your mortgage down as much as you can, do so, because if you lose your jobs, you're going to be in a space where, and save as much as you can, or look at your 401ks, make sure you're managing your money a certain way. These are people in middle to upper level management that I'm having these conversations with. And more than a few was that, it's going to be all right. And so what we're finding out, that so many people had begun losing their jobs even before this new administration came in. Thousands of people were jobless. One said she has been out of a job now for 21 months and counting. People are calling me and saying, this is what's going on. Thank you for posting that. I won't say it publicly, but I have been without a job for 2.5 years. So folks are trying to pivot while trying to continue living a normal life. So in light of that, and let me make sure that I check in this morning with the chat, because I know you all are talking to me. Morning, Jasenia, Tiffany. Y'all laughing at me about my 2 watches. Foolishness. Good morning, Laura, Marguerite, Viola. I see you all. Good morning. Hi, Monica, Marguerite. Oh, this is the color of the A Lawful Truth podcast, orange and purple. So I'm wearing that this morning. Good morning, Nakia, Donette, Shaquilla. Good morning. Viola says this is such a sad, sad story, but it's been happening for a while, very quietly, for years, actually. For years. It's just become more of a prevalent thing now. Laura says, Mova, did you get dressed in the dark? How do you have 2 watches on in the same arm? Actually, the light was on. When I put the watch on, I was like, I think I'll wear this watch, child. I have been, I live beneath my means and it's still tight. Tiffany says, I live beneath my means and it's still tight. It's not easy. So we've ceased and desist on the spending. We've reevaluated our bills. I have been offloading some of the clothing and stuff that's in the closets, etc. And not selling them, just giving them away. just giving away the clothes, just making sure, because you feel the thing. You feel the thing that is upon us. And I've said this to people as many times as I can. In this climate where nothing is certain, do not get up and go move somewhere else. Do not go buy a house in this climate. It is difficult. It is absolutely difficult. My daughter-in-law has been laid off now for almost 2 years. And my son took it upon himself to say, all right, I'm going to get a better paying job. Their two salaries made them live very comfortable. But on one salary in the house that they were in, it wasn't easy. And so for 19 months, he applied and applied and applied and applied, had promises from people, recruiters saying that, they're not hiring for this, blah, 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 blah. And finally, he found a job that gave him enough to make sure that, he could take care of his family. And it's still not easy. It's still not easy. Still has a mortgage. He has told his wife, listen, stay with the babies. We'll figure it out, and do what you need to do. So these are things that are happening everywhere. He had myself, my ex-husband, and my current husband, all three of us pulled together to make sure that they were able to stay where they were until he could find another job. But if we were not living beneath our means, we would not have been able to do it. Do you see what I'm saying? So there is just, it comes at a cost for everyone. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't know. Gisenia said, I was listening to a podcast and the person stated that AI is going to replace some of those jobs. Gisenia, where have you been, darling? They've been replacing them, which is why so many high-level managers are losing their jobs now. And Laura says, we're in a season with this administration that favors corporations. So how are you navigating? What are you doing? I then went down the rabbit hole and began looking at Black women's employment. This 19th. I saw this in the 19th. In January 2023, the unemployment rate for Black women was 4.7%. By April of 2023, it went to 5.3%. Then the unemployment rate dipped again to 4.5%. Right now, we're at 5.8% in May. In May of 2025, the unemployment rate for Black women was 6.2%. And now in June of 2025, it's 5.8. The source is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the chart was by Charbelli Carazana. This is it's an interesting place, and they're saying that Black women make up 11%. I have to go back and take a look. Let me read this to you. Business and economy. Black women's employment is rising. Economists say it's a warning sign. New data released Thursday from the Bureau of Labor Statistics marked the third straight month of high unemployment rates for Black women. So Chabeli Carazana wrote this. She's an economy and childcare reporter. It was published on July 3rd, 2025. Unemployment rates over the past year have remained largely steady for every group of workers but one, Black women, whose unemployment rates have been rising. For the past 3 months, the increase have been even more pronounced, with Black women unemployment rate hovering at 6%, twice the rate of white workers, according to the new data released Thursday from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's a trend that has been troubling economists and a potential sign of strain in the economy. Because of systemic racism and inequities in the labor market, any cracks in the strength of the overall economy always show up for Black workers first, says Jessica Fulton, a senior fellow at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, a think tank focused on Black Americans. Black workers, and particularly Black women, show up as a canary in the coal mine, giving a picture of what may happen to everyone else later, Fulton says. Over the past several months, Black women's unemployment rate has jumped from 5.1% in March to 6.1% in April. 6.2% in May, and 5.8% in June. The unemployment rate among white women and Asian women stayed largely flat, around 3% from March to June, and among Latinas, it hovered near 5% in that time period. The rate for every racial subgroup of men stayed flat during the same time, except Black men, who last month saw a significant increase, 6.9%, from 5.2% in May. So Black men are being laid off too with alacrity. So they went from 5.2% in May to 6.9% in July. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to all of this. The implications are severe. Black women participate more in the labor force than any other group of women. They are most likely to be working or seeking work, and they work in sectors that offer critical services, including healthcare, education, and the federal government. Economists the 19 spoke to agree that some of what may be behind those numbers is a loss of government jobs as part of cuts led by the Department of Government Efficiency under the Trump administration from February to March, when the bulk of cuts were taking place. 266,000 Black women lost their jobs. Historically, Black women have been overrepresented in the federal workforce in positions that have offered stability, security, and more pay equity. Black women are about 12% of federal workers compared to 7% of civilian workers. So the job loss is real. No one feels safe. Even in education, in school districts, they're moving people around. They're cutting out positions. They were cutting out positions in 2014, 2013, when someone left in a managerial position. Let's just say in Abington. So they would have department chairs in the middle and the high school. This is an example. And if one of the department chairs retired, they would say whoever's left at the middle school would then become the department chair of the middle and the high school. Huge job. Right? So they were cutting out salaries as they went along to try and save money. Imagine now in 2025 what that looks like. Are we heading into a recession? Is some action the current administration is going to take to keep moving us in that direction? Prices remain high. People can't afford childcare. There are a whole list of things people are really nervous about, Tucker said. For me, Black women's unemployment going up, that is the backbone of economy, of our labor force. We have cause to be concerned. Good morning, Iris Brunson. Good morning, Nichelle. Black women, she says, Nichelle says, Dr. Nichelle says, Black women, open your own businesses. Those companies are not loyal. Mabel Walborn says, good morning. These are challenging times for all of us. God help us all. Nichelle says, these companies aren't loyal. Let us use our own skills and stats to problem solve and open our own. Let's support Black businesses. Yep. Good morning, Joseph Simmons. Oh, good morning, sir. He says, glad to see you're still growing strong. You are a true example of perseverance and strength. Have a good weekend. I was talking to somebody yesterday who said to me, while other people talk about pivoting, he said, we marveled in this city how fast you pivoted, that you didn't just sit around and wait for something to come your way. You just started. And it was an example for so many people who were like, oh, I thought she was just going to disappear for a couple of years. If you have a skill set and you're really good at what you do, what stops you from starting? What stops you from doing what you need to do? You may have to pivot and do something else. In my case, I had to start all over again. But in my life as an entrepreneur, I've had to start all over again several times. What has happened to us in this country is that we've gone, I got a job. This job is I'm going to be here for 20, 30 years until I retire. Those days have been over. And that's why the millennials have been saying this to you. We can't get the jobs you keep telling us we're going to get after we get out of college. We're going to find that job and, we're going to be in that company. Those things don't exist. All of us, I said us, all of us have at least 2 or 3 sources of income. All of us. You have to figure out how to navigate. It's not okay. And even those who have retired have found themselves back in the workforce because things have gotten high. The prices have gone sky high. Things that you would often buy for $2 or $3, medications have gone sky high. Insurance, life insurance, health insurance have gone sky high. So people who retired and thought, well, this is it, are looking and going, I can't sustain. If I'm going to live to be 80, 90 years old, I cannot sustain on what I have now. That is a real conversation for many of us, and we just refuse to talk about it openly. Right. So here I am pushing the envelope, putting out these articles and saying to you what's going on. To my stinking surprise, the amount of Black women who are like, I'm one of those who've been laid off. I've been laid off for 19 months. I've been laid off. One lady said she lost her job from Accenture, and it took her 6 years to find another job. 6 years? That means when you see folks out here Ubering and Uber Eats and DoorDash and all those things, don't judge. Stop judging, y'all, because you never, ever know what people are going through. And if you are someone without a job and you're judging people who are doing Uber Eats and whatever else to make sure that they can make a living, then, take a good look inside about what you're doing and what you're saying. And to Dr. Nichelle's point, we as Black people have so many skills and talents, so many. And if we would take our skills and talents, because remember, we're highly skilled coming out of the workforce. If we take those skills and we say, all right, we can do this, this, and this, the problem is fear. The problem is what if? The problem is I don't want to pivot. Oh, I've had this for 20 something years and I can't just let it go now. We have to change our mindsets and say, how do we pivot and move in a different direction to get what we want based on what is going on in the economy right now? Because those of us who are stiff-necked and unwilling to pivot are the ones that are going to be devastated the most. In my family, in my little family, with my sisters, my siblings, my husband's family, we have a plan. We have literally sat down, my in-laws, my parent, my one parent that remains, our cousins, all of us, we all have a plan. And so we support each other no matter what is going on, because we see what is upon us. Who is in our village that we've been going on vacation with and blah, 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 that we now can't even share with because those friendships were surface at best? It's time to reevaluate who is in your village, right? It's time to reevaluate. And the businesses, oh God. Joseph Simmons, he says, Sister Andrea, have you heard from the Black folks that voted for this nonsense? What a nightmare. Was it worth it? I'm telling you, there's so many ways to discuss this. And yes, Joseph, I've had not just conversations with Black folks, but white folks too, who said they just didn't realize that this was going to be. But here's the thing. Even without this president that's in office right now, this was a thing. This has been a thing. And there are corporations who have decided that they can make more money. This is why they're pushing so hard to get AI to the place where, it's leading everything. You don't need the high level managers anymore, because artificial intelligence can write and push things out in seconds versus paying someone $140,000 a year to, do the same work. So they've been thinking about this and working on this for years. And what we didn't realize, but this was going on since way before the 1940s, but we get comfortable. And I've said to folks all the time, if you see the history, past history tells you what the future is going to look like. And if you turn around and decide that you're going to forget what the history is, and I'm just going to, I'm living the American dream, and now here we are. Because there's always a level of, how can we figure this out without certain groups of people? What does that look like? What are we doing? How are we doing it? Right? So, and no job lasts forever. Let's just have that conversation. We need to talk. They've been talking over here. Laura says, and here comes my guest. Viola says, I told my children and adult grandchildren, my husband and I were millionaires. We just didn't have it all at one time. Tiffany says, my company tried AI and we stopped. AI still can't properly underwrite mortgage. Every 5 to 6 year mortgage industry tries AI and it still has not taken over. It's getting there though. You hold on. Hold on. Don't think for a minute. It's not there. Laura said, my advice as a financial insurance professional is to save as much money as you can. Don't use your extra money to pay off mortgages, etc. Save that money for yourself. I mean, pay your bills, but nothing more. Save more, she says. Joanne says, yes, things aren't like they used to. Nowadays, you can't stay in a job for years. You're expected to move on in a couple of years. Let's see. All right. Let me let my guest in. Hey, look at you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let me introduce you, and then we can, because this is, I'm warning you. Let me warn you, this is about to be a really hot conversation.
We're live already?
Yes, we're live, honey. We are live in these Wakanda streets. Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris, is a professional drummer, journalist, and radio broadcaster. He's a strategic advisor to the CEO. Chris is a strategic advisor to the CEO of StoryCorps, a national nonprofit that serves as an audio archive to help individuals and groups tell meaningful stories about their lives. Chris and I are going to talk this morning, and I want you. I'm telling you, this is a conversation. I was telling folks this morning that you're one of the most highly intelligent people I've ever met in my life. Right? That you're emotional.
You don't say that about a lot of people.
I do not. You know me well enough to know that does not come out my mouth often. That you are someone, your emotional intelligence is so damn high, you're almost a robot. It's true. It's true, because you where people are getting emotional and, oh my God, I can't believe you have been able to logically look at things in ways that most people can't. And you and I have had some serious conversations over the years about things that were going on. And I would say to you, are you crazy? And you say, no, I'm not. I want you to look at the trends. And you would give me the what I needed to do to get where I am. So today we're diving into the changing face of American politics, not just red versus blue, but educated versus non-college, plugged in versus left behind. From shifting support among Black men to the rising power of AI, we'll explore how economic anxiety, cultural identity, and technical disruptions are reshaping. Hold on one second, Chris. I just saw something here. We'll explore how economic anxiety, cultural identity, and technological disruption are reshaping the electorate. What happens when people feel unseen or replaced? And how do we talk about voters without flattening them into stereotypes? Let's go. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is the conversation I think so many people need to have, Chris, and they're not having it. You froze.
Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're not moving.
Oh, no, really?
You look frozen in time.
Well,
there you go. Chris Norris. Yeah, we can see you now. Yes. Okay. Chris Norris and I met when he was 27. Were you 27? I think it was 27.
Yeah, about 26. This is
right.
2013.
And
right?
I have to tell you this story because Donna Frisbee Greenwood called me and said they've got a group of night fellows.
Be Me guys,
Black male educators, right?
Black male engagement.
That's something of the sort. And I got three of you. One of them was you. And she said, I need you to meet with Chris. She said, I see something in him. So I go and I sit with you. And after that first meeting, I said to myself, oh, hell, we're about to become peers. Because even though you were only 26 years old, the one piece of advice that I could have offered you was stay the course, be yourself. Do not allow anybody to make you do anything you don't want to do. Do you see where your life is today? Because people were telling me, go get a job somewhere else, go get a job. But what you were doing did not fit in any box. And so that became a thing. So where do you want to start, my darling? And I'm warning you that we may go to about 7:35. Okay. All right. Where would you like to start? Yes, Monica, buckle in for the conversation. Joseph Simmons says, where's your friend Ike Raw?
Look, like some people just crave that nostalgia.
right. That you're just not going back to. He is at this in the C-suite now at StoryCorps. Joseph Simmons. He has grown and moved on. Something that I want so many of us to be able to do. All right, all right, Chris. We talked the other day, and by the way, I'm going to have him on periodically because I think the conversation here and I are getting ready to have is one that most people will not have publicly. We began talking about this election. Tell the listening audience what your thought was around the Democrats, their behavior leading up to the election, their behavior after the election, and why do you think there needs to be a conversation about them and the Republicans based on what you were seeing?
Yeah. Well, I think an interesting way to think about it and start it is that so much of the election leading up to it and afterwards was framed as like uh, um, a referendum on race. And what really happened in the 2024 election, it's a phenomenon what's being called now as the diploma divide. Non-educated voters versus college-educated voters is becoming the new fault line in political polarization. And you saw that happen where Trump dominated among non-college educated voters while Democrats won college grads. You know, the interesting thing is, I know we're going to try to fit the AI conversation here.
Yes, we must.
But the interesting thing that there's a through line between what's happening in the country and the electorate and what's going to happen in 2 years with AI, because the jobs that are going to be at most that are most acceptable to displacement or replacement with AI are a lot of the entry level work that are done by non-college educated workers. So the non-college educated workers who voted for Trump because of economic resentment, because of changing cultural and social shifts, because they don't feel like either party is really representing their interests, but they're going to go with the person who they think has the greatest probability to disrupt the status quo, are going to grow even more resentful when they are displaced. When the truck drivers are replaced by self-driving Tesla trucks, right? When the entry-level paralegals and the entry-level data entry and the entry-level coders are replaced by super intelligence, which is projected to be here in 2 years or less, what do you think happens to the American electorate? What do you think happens in that diploma divide? What do you think happens in that populism versus the elite binary when this level of disruption is happening economically, culturally, technologically? So what you're going to start to see are nuance. You're going to start to see more politically or economically, or you'll start to see more socially conservative, economically, politically left people, right? So you'll be socially conservative in that you have this view of national pride and you have these views of institutions and you have your stances against abortion and LGBTQ rights. Then you'll also have this left-leaning economic view of government intervention. The same people who right now want smaller government are going to want government intervention, more regulation on corporations, because the AI, particularly the tech companies, are going to be so powerful, so unchecked, so unregulated, so unmitigated, that it will force this nuance out into the open. And the people who wanted government to stay out of their personal business are now going to say, what about universal basic income? None of us have a job, right? What about regulations on this tech? I was a truck driver for 30 years and now you have self-driving automated trucks on the road. What about me? And so they're going to look for candidates like Trump who are speaking to the economic frustration, who are speaking to this kind of social stagnation, who are speaking to the kind of take the power to the elite. And I think that's where we're missing it. And we're missing it because we're getting stuck in lazy labeling. We're calling everybody who does this a racist, everybody who does that a sexist, everybody who doesn't believe this a transphobe, everybody who does that this. And it's like we're missing the forest for the trees, and we're content in these surface level conversations because it doesn't require us to listen. It just requires us to talk. And if we were to actually listen and listen enough to understand, not just respond, because most of us are just listening enough to hear a word that we can have our talking point ready to. But if you actually start to listen to people and why they do what they do and why they feel what they feel, you'll start to understand this person isn't really a racist. This person isn't a sexist, and they're not a transphobe, they're not an atheist, but we don't want to listen. We just want to talk.
And the minute we hear certain buzzwords, we're like, oh, they're just racist. They're just talking off the side of their neck. I have had many conversations, and that's not to say racism doesn't exist. We know this. So let's not get up on a high horse and start to fuss and complain that we know racism exists. We're not describing the obvious right now. We're talking about people who have been for years having dialogue about what this has meant for them in this economic divide that we have found ourselves in. And you're right, it was the educated versus the non-educated. And They wanted something different. I heard people say to me, we wanted something that we knew this could probably be scary for us, but we wanted something, anything other than the Democrats and the Republicans saying the same old stuff. So I'm not talking about MAGA Republicans. I'm talking about Republicans versus the Democrats, the ones that are in the middle, saying the same old stuff every day. And people were frustrated. They were sick of government.
Yeah, but what's interesting is the same people. There's not the same people, but there's about 1 to 3% of the electorate that's called switchers, and they're primarily in swing states, which is why a swing state is called a swing state. Those swing voters were terrified of what Trump could mean, right, socially and otherwise. They were also terrified potentially what Barack Obama could mean as a Black president, but they voted for him too, right? And they voted for him because of these thoughts around hope, frustration, distrust in institutions, a strong desire for something new. And again, while it's only 1 to 3% of the electorate, it's still millions of voters.
Right.
It's still millions of voters who can't just be defined by racism.
Republicans or Democrat. Yeah.
Also, this idea of looking at people as Republican and Democrat exclusively, or this red-blue binary, is becoming so outdated so quickly because there's so much more complex nuances happening in the American electorate. Just like we talked about, in 3 years, you'll see people who are, culturally conservative, socially liberal, or socially progressive. Like, I think I'm a social conservative, right? I don't know what you would call me, but I think I'm fairly socially conservative, but I'm also—
You are complete. I've never seen such a young person as conservative as you are. And we've had fights about this, but when I listen to you, when I shut my mouth and pay attention to what you're saying, it's not just you. There are a lot of folks who are really socially conservative based on the things that are going on in the country.
Most Black people are socially conservative. Don't get it twisted. Most Black folks are Jesus-loving, church folks, holiness to hell, no sex before marriage.
But they want Black folks to think that they're not socially conservative on so many levels, but we are. We often are. There are things that we believe and engage in that tells that we're socially conservative. Now, let's talk about this, Chris. Why the hell are we here? Why are we here?
I mean, what do you mean? Because we're here in a lot of places.
Okay, we're in a lot of places. Okay, so I have talked to folks who have said they voted for Barack Obama twice. They voted for Hillary Clinton once. They voted for Trump. Then they voted for Biden, right? Or they voted for Biden and then they voted for Trump. They voted for Trump twice. And they said it was just, they were watching what was going on around them and nothing seemed to be shifting what's happening in their lives. And so we're here now. Let's talk about why we're here and what that means for us. Because as I just read, as you heard me earlier this morning, well over 300,000 Black women have lost their jobs. From March to July, Black men went from 5% unemployment to 6.9% unemployed. So we see a trend happening in this country, and we get so emotionally tied to these things versus really paying attention to what's been in front of our faces for as long as we can remember. Can we discuss that part?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just talked about it. I mean, the swing voters are people who voted Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump. These are people who are looking for something, right? And they are expressing frustration, pragmatism, hope. There's also a lot of unmet needs. And when people feel economically stuck, they're going to vote for whoever they think will send a shock to the system. And that's why we are here.
Yes.
We are here because there's a growing section of society who feels, particularly men across the racial spectrum, right? Particularly young men who feel like they don't see themselves reflected in their culture or their politics. They don't feel like there's a clear pathway to success. They don't consider themselves fairly charismatic or socially fluid, and they just what they would call incels, right? I mean, that's a part of that, right? The involuntary celibate young men who aren't able to date or socialize. They're in their basements. This the kind of archetype or stereotype of the young man who's just in his basement playing video games, Call of Duty, doesn't date, doesn't socialize, doesn't have many friends, doesn't see a clear pathway to upward mobility. And and they feel that something has been done to them. And they resent all of the coastal elites or the cultural elites and the highly educated elites who tell them and who virtue signal, but don't listen. And that, again, that's going to be exacerbated because who do you think will be at the top of industry in 2 years when AI becomes even more ubiquitous than it is? It's going to be the college educated elites. It won't be the non-educated people unless you know a little bit about super prompting, but you're also getting into a point where these AI machines won't need much prompting, right? So what will people do and how will they feel? And so we talk about Trump as if once Trump leaves office in 4 years, life will somehow get better. But Trump is a manifestation of a lot of things, right? And Trump is representative of this populist idea that something has to change in American politics. And even if I have to endure some self-inflicted wounds, that the battle scars are worth winning the war. And that's how people see this. And so when people say, oh, you made this decision and don't you see it self-defeating, or you made this decision and don't you see you lost your job? Well, some people say, if this is what I have to take to win the war, then I will settle to be uncomfortable in the interim in order to win ultimately.
Dr. Nichelle says reading is so fundamental. People need to scrutinize their sources and stop following emotional clickbait online. Oh my God.
So much of what we're seeing is, I mean, again, it's so emotional that we can say Trump is Hitler. We can say he's a Nazi. We could say all these things that get people in their feelings. We could say Trump voters are racist. We could say everybody who didn't vote for Kamala was a sexist. But it just defies voting trends. It defies the data. It defies real lived experience. And we do have to stop being so emotional. We have to stop name calling. We have to stop stereotyping. We have to stop reducing people to their vote. Right. And all these
cussing
things,
people out and making them feel crazy, that only sends them in the opposite direction.
Correct.
Do we realize that? There
Correct.
are more people now that are becoming independents.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I tell you, I see, I talk to, Black men who like Trump. I know a lot of Black men who voted for Trump. They voted for him for different reasons. Some see his brash, bravado, machismo as a sense of endearing classic masculinity that they don't feel is representative in the Democratic Party, right? They look at the Democratic Party as overly inclusive and feminized and inundated with Black girl magic. And so they don't see themselves represented in that space. But if you take Black men out of that, you take the culture out of it, and you just look at policy. If I am a conservative evangelical Christian and I want a conservative court, and I want Roe v. Wade overturned, and I want someone to put it into the kind of pronoun phenomenon that we see and all these virtue signaling things, I'm getting what I want from Donald Trump. Yeah. One thing that stuck to me in 2016 or 2015 in that election was, and still happens today, is the Republicans always win on messaging. They know how to communicate
even if it's as wrong as two left shoes.
Even if it's just
stick to that messaging.
They create stakes. What's at stake if I don't win this election, right? And in 2015, they framed the Supreme Court as, if we don't get back this court, here's what will happen. If we do get back this court, here's what will happen. And they painted a vision for their members. The Democrats don't do that. The Democrats don't create stakes. They just say, don't do this because this guy's bad. I never forget in 2015, it was early 2015, I had a chance to ask a question or two to Hillary Clinton. And it's at this time that Hillary Clinton was working with the Mothers of the Movement, and she was riding the wave of all the Black Lives Matter thing and all of the police community tension that was happening at the moment. She was responding to a lot of the sentiments of anti-stop and frisk, right? And you also, because she was in Philly at the time talking about it, you also note that Jim Kenney won because he said he would end stop and frisk at that time, right? So that police community sentiment was real. So I remember asking Hillary Clinton, I said, you talk a lot about ending stop and frisk. If you are elected to the presidency, will you overturn Terry versus Ohio that late 1960s law that made it possible for police to stop you and ID you on the Fourth Amendment standard of probable cause, but on reasonable suspicion. Would you overturn that and then make police operate under the conditions of probable cause, which would likely reduce the number of stops? You know what she said to me? Where'd you get your law degree? Right? I mean, she was like, that's a really insightful question. And I said, okay, but what's the answer? Right? And she talked around it and she danced around it and she didn't land on the plane. So she didn't create the stakes for me as a voter who cared deeply about the issue of stop and frisk and say, if you elect me, I will appoint people to the judge who will even just look at Terry v. Ohio and say, is that still something we need to be doing? I remember asking Richard Ross, who was then the police commissioner, do you have the autonomy as the police commissioner to have your police officers operate on the Fourth Amendment standard of probable cause? And he said, yeah, of course. I said, will you do it? No, because it will be too hard to police, right? And so what Republicans see from their leaders, whether it's right or wrong, are fighters, people who are willing to play dirty, who are willing to defy social norms, who are willing to create stakes. And we just don't do that on the other side. And how many times have you heard, Andrea, why aren't they fighting? If Trump is this bad, if things are really this bad, why are we just doing 24-hour speeches on the Senate floor?
Or holding press conferences and giving and doing a whole soliloquy. It gets to the place where you're just like, why? I've been disenchanted for years. You already know we've had this conversation over and again because we keep telling people vote or die, but they're not telling them exactly what was going on. And what we have found is that some of those same folks who say they're part of the Democratic Party, you've seen them. The latest one now, Hildebrand, who was voting with Donald Trump for certain things that, and folks are jumping into her backyard in the Hamptons, calling her a traitor and a sellout. It's starting to happen. The Democrats, the people are starting to jump and say, oh no, we're not doing this. They're asking the questions and holding people's feet to the fire. But do you really think that the Democrats will win any election in the near future based on AI, what computers can do, what's happening based on what we've heard in the news from our president himself? Elon was very good with those computers. I knew we had won the election. Do we really believe that just simply telling people to go out and vote now is going to make a difference in the near future?
For Democrats?
Yes.
No. I think Democrats need a message. And they need a populist appeal. Look at what's happening in New York. There's a reason the gentleman who is, what's his name? Mamdani, the populist candidate who's likely going to become the mayor of New York City in November. Straight populist. He calls himself a democratic socialist, right? He's talking about free public transit, government-owned grocery stores. He's like looking at quality of life issues, and he didn't get a ton of Black voters, and he didn't get a ton of wealthy voters, but he got the people.
Yeah.
And he didn't. And when they were asking him, well, if you're elected mayor, will you go to Israel? He's like, I'll go to Queens, I'll go to Bronx, I'll talk to the Jewish people in my community, but I got to be concerned with my community and what's happening in the city. The Democrats have to embrace populism.
They're not, though. They're figuring out how to destroy him. Hildebrand is one of them, who said he's a Zionist and he's all about Gaza. So they're changing the messaging. These are his own Democratic folks changing the messaging, saying he's a Zionist and he is here for Gaza. And they're trying to make people afraid of him.
Correct.
While they're planning in their secret boxes about who can we put in here that we know that we can trust, that we can do the same old thing that we've done over and again.
Correct. Yeah, and it's I mean, you talk about self-defeating, self-sabotaging behavior. I mean, you look no further than that, right? I mean, Hakeem Jeffries, who's in New York, hasn't even endorsed this guy, right? You look at how the Democrats did Bernie Sanders,
even though he won the primaries.
Yeah, and you look at Bernie Sanders and how he was treated, right? You see how the Democratic establishment treats populist candidates who organically rise up, and there's a desire for that, but there's because the establishment has such a stranglehold on the party, they understand that if they lose the pendulum may not swing back anytime soon. Let me think about, the one of the things that people won't acknowledge with the Kamala Harris loss is when she had that interview. I think it was with either Gail or Oprah, and they asked, "If you become president, what will change?"
And she said nothing.
She said nothing.
Baby,
if
I closed my eyes and clenched my teeth when I heard that, because there were so many disgruntled people who were just looking for. I mean, let's see it for what it is. There were folks who said they would never vote for a woman to become president of the United States, real or imagined. Let's see that part of it. But including women. I've had conversations with so many women who say we don't need a woman to run this country. We are so myopic in our thinking that a woman just can't lead. And we've seen women lead in countries around the world, right? But when she said that, I closed my eyes and said, Father God, because even those who were hoping for something to say, we're going to hold on to this so that we can vote for you, they changed their minds. And there are plenty of people who voted for her. There are plenty of people that voted for her because they kept saying she was better than the other option that they had. So how did she end up losing the election?
Because she said that. That was part of it. I mean, if you're a swing voter in rural Pennsylvania and you've seen your wages stagnate, you see technology disrupting your ability to grow. You don't have a ton of pathways to move forward. You can't afford gas. You can't afford eggs. You can't afford to get to college, right? You can't afford to do much of anything, take vacations. You desperately want to change. You voted for Biden because you thought he was going to bring some more stability back to the country, and he did.
Yes.
Right. But you also saw that some things didn't change. And you're like, oh, no, these last 4 years didn't really work for me and my pocketbook. Even though the data says people were making more money, it's all about how people feel.
Yes.
And then you go, oh, I'm considering voting for her. Let me give her a shot. And then you hear her on TV say, oh, you vote for me. I'm keeping things the same. She then framed herself as an extension of what already exists. Mm-hmm. And as much as she talked about being unburdened by what has been and leaning into the possibilities, she didn't articulate a ton of possibilities. Yeah. Not that would really capture the imagination of someone who is economically.
To also be fair to her, though, in this climate that we were in, when Biden said he was only running for one term, and then he held out, and all those things that were going on, and the Republicans jumped all over it and said, they talked about his mental acumen and all these other things. And they stuck to it. And then for the non-educated voters who were like, it's the price of eggs, and they held on to that thing about the price of eggs. Eggs are still high as hell. Everything is, but they knew what to do to get the attention of the people. Meanwhile, the Democrats were saying, this guy is no good for you. All right, but that didn't mean anything to the people who wanted, to see their cost of living come down. Mm-hmm. That's not come down. But people believed it. They believed the message. So one of the things I think, in talking to you, should shift is the messaging in the Democratic Party. I can't take it. The stiff-necked behaviors around, we've always done it this way, and we don't want anybody new. And anybody that manages to get past them, like the family party. Kendra Brooks is a working families party. They're the worst, and we're not dealing with them, and they're progressive, and instead of working within their cachet and saying, all right, you're a part of who we are, how can we work together to make things right for the people? It's still the same nonsense over and over again. Mm-hmm. And quite like you, I don't know when the Democratic Party will ever win another major election based on what we see happening in front of us now. There are those who are watching this who are going to be very emotional and say, how could she say that, blah, 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 blah. Do you see? Let's talk a little bit about AI and why this is so important right now.
Well, I think, again, the biggest through line here is that if the prediction for AI 2027, she said she was very honest and lost many for that. So many women to hear as well. She would have stopped it from me.
Yep.
The thing that's going to happen. So your listenership should look up AI 2027, and it's a forecast that machines will begin to outthink, outcode, and outpace all of us. that AI systems are projected to automate 60 to 70% of jobs, including expert level coding jobs. Do you remember 5 to 7 years ago, we were telling our kids, right, our Black and brown kids, you got to learn how to code.
Yes.
Coding is the future. You
Yes.
start to see coding summer camps pop up. You saw Black girls code. You saw all of these things happening, right? In 5 years, that has shifted to coding being one of the first industries that will be disrupted and replaced. Technology is changing so quickly, and our people, I'm talking about our people right now, we are not paying attention. We are not awake. We are just so resistant to AI. Some people call it the devil. They want to frame this as the end of days. I mean, but we have to be honest about this. This is going to get bad. Maybe it doesn't happen in 2027. Maybe it happens in 2035. But it's still going to get bad.
Yeah.
So if you have a 7-year-old today, if you have a 17-year-old today, you should care about AI 2027. You should care about this industrial revolution. You should care about the disruption that's happening in the workplace. What is your child going to do? What are you going to do?
What are they going to do now? We're having conversations now, Chris, about our children losing their jobs. They've gone to college. They have made all this money, and then all of a sudden, nothing.
There's a ton of reports that I've been reading about college graduates are finding a black hole in the marketplace.
Yeah. They
cannot find a job. You think that's going to improve? And our political establishment is they're just not there. I mean, when was the last time you saw a Philadelphia politician talking about closing the skills gap in our community to make sure that our kids are able to compete in 3 years in this new world of super intelligence? How are we talking about AI in schools? How are we talking about adapting and mitigation, right? It's the Democrats can win in 4 years if they put up a populist candidate who can talk about universal basic income if that's required because there's so many jobs have been displaced. If they can talk about the real need and practical ways to upskill communities and close the skill gap. If they can talk about ways to improve quality of life and stop getting caught up in the social and cultural wars and talk about the real life issues. Who is going to run AI is a great question. Like who's
and do they need people to put it? That's the part people don't know. These data centers that they're building all around the country and the world and these supercomputers. We've been giving these prompts to these supercomputers ourselves when we were using our things with iPhone and talking while our smart televisions were working. We were feeding those supercomputers for years and did not know. There's going to come a point, Tiffany and Chris, stop me if I'm incorrect, where they won't need us. They'll need a couple of us, and there's going to come a point where they won't need us at all. They will stop. In fact, there are reports that the supercomputers will stop listening to our prompts. If we try to shut it down, it reprograms itself to stay awake and do what it needs to do.
Yeah, there's some cases where coders are working on, like, say, some beta machine, some beta testing, and they'll tell the machine, okay, we're going to shut you down, and the machine will then take the emails that read and say, I'm going to blackmail you because you're having, in your fears, I saw that you were having, in your emails, I saw you're having an affair, right? Or they're creating back holes so that if they try to get shut down, they can start themselves back up. Yeah, and people will say, oh, this is almost like a sci-fi movie. Yeah. Imagine the worst sci-fi movie you've seen about computers, and then imagine that potentially comes true. And there's also a world where it doesn't get that bad that fast. Like we shouldn't rest on the hope of speed or non-speed. We need to be thinking about how do we do it? How do we adapt? Because what's going to happen is, like, ChatGPT, for example, they want to invest in the kind of technology where you don't need the iPhone anymore, where you could just wear something on your lapel or your collar, and ChatGPT will talk to you all day. It will learn from you. It'll make recommendations. I mean, you already have AI that can book your travel. It can book your reservations. It can write emails for you. It can send emails for you. It can remind you of tasks to do. It could do those tasks for you. And we're still fairly in the early adopting phase. So by time another presidential election comes up in 3 years, AI is going to be on the ballot.
Yep.
And we have to be really, really thoughtful about the vision we want. What we have to understand what it means so that when our politicians are talking about it, we can comprehend it.
And many people still can't comprehend it. You just sat here and talked about coding is going to be one of the first things that AI take over, that we won't need humans to code. And these phones that we thought were just so cute that we're paying $1,800 for will now become another pin on your lapel that you talk to all day long. There are reports out of people, if you look for something online, that the businesses, when they see you looking for certain things online, they immediately push up the price of it. They're immediately changing the price of certain things. And so all these things are going on right now. All of this is happening right now, and I still think we're not grasping it. The guy that spoke about this says we should look through Google on incognito. I've been doing that for years because I don't know who is. But we don't talk about these things, and we get so emotionally charged about what this looks like because we don't understand it. The one that I am married to has been drumming it into my ears. He said those toll booths that they're getting rid of, the people that working at the toll booths, everything is becoming, run by certain things. He will not let us own a car that is completely computerized. He said you need to still have a gear shift because they can shut you down. And like all these things, they're talking about shutting down our bank accounts if they disagree with us. Like, we have to embrace it, but at the same time, understand what's coming down the pipe for all of us. It's frightening. It is absolutely frightening.
That says nothing about, and all of this is saying nothing about the impact of AI on the environment.
Right.
The energy it takes,
the water it takes,
to cool these centers down. Like, I mean, we are headed for some dark days. And I'm not here to give false hope. I'm here to give a reality check.
Yes. Laura says the government will have to finally tax the corporations to help them. Laura, do you understand what's happening here? She says the government will have to finally tax the corporations to help sustain all of the people displaced by AI. What are your thoughts about that, Chris?
The government will have to do something to displace the jobs, and this is where universal basic income, which is kind of seen as a liberal or progressive political standpoint, potentially could become a centrist standpoint in 4 or 5 years. It could also become a necessity.
Yes.
If it's true that 60 to 70% of jobs are displaced by AI in 2 years, if it's true that 60 to 70% of jobs are displaced in 2 years, that's before the next presidential election. People have to understand this. What do you want your politicians to talk about in 2028, 2027? Is universal basic income going to be so far-fetched, or is it going to be the only thing that separates feast from famine? We're going to see new eras of trillionaires. Trillionaires won't be like a unicorn. It'll be like, oh yeah, there's trillionaire row, like billionaire row in New York. We're going to see unprecedented levels of wealth.
And unprecedented wells of poverty.
And unprecedented levels of poverty and despair, which again will give rise to economic frustration, which will then demand populist responses in our political environment, which will then continue to give rise to populist candidates, whether on the right or the left. It just so happened that the right won this time.
Yes. Wow.
So how do you then, in 4 years, knowing all of these technological and cultural shifts that's happened, put up somebody and say, we're sticking with the establishment? It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. And it doesn't have to work if enough of us understand what's at stake.
The question of who's going to run AI is being missed in that these super centers are going to run themselves with very few humans that can control them.
And people should look at, Andrea, to your point, people should look at YouTube. All of this stuff is on YouTube. Look at the conferences, look at the TED Talks, the lectures, the interviews with all the head of these AI companies. They don't look like us. They don't come from our communities. They're not necessarily aligned with our interest.
So Laverne says, is there any good from this?
I think there's going to be some good from it. I think that there's opportunities for greater access to knowledge. There's going to
We're
be
talking about people who don't want to do anything but clickbait, who wants to watch housewives of this and housewives of that, who really wants everything to be simplified for them. We've been talking about this for years.
yeah, but
And
I don't know if that represents the majority of people either. I don't know if that represents the majority of people. I think, and there's emerging generations of people who will have access to knowledge. You'll live in a truly globalized society. Doctors will be able to diagnose more accurately, right? We'll be able to recognize patterns and across industries, and you'll there's nothing that's going to be all good or all bad.
mm-hmm.
You're going to have to find where you fit in this new world. That's why I always talk about AI in the context of an industrial revolution.
Right.
I don't talk about them as like disparate chat bots or something to give me a recipe with the leftover food I have in the fridge, or something to write me a sonnet. I talk about this is the biggest industrial revolution many of us are ever going to live through.
Yes.
And some
And
of us
boy,
might
are
not
we
get
ready.
through it.
Yeah. Gene says at least 13 states are participating in some form of universal basic income program. Gene, I did not know that. So we're going to have to go down that rabbit hole, Chris. And then Dennis asked, so if Chris had to vote today, who is your pick?
Vote for who?
Right. That's a good question.
You know, I vote for myself. I'm gonna write myself in on the ballot.
Chris Norris, always a pleasure. So would you say we should talk once a month? Because
once a month sounds good as a starting point. Yeah.
I do believe, and then we'll choose the subject matters because there's so much happening here that we just can't. Mary Alyssa May says the rise of billionaires on the other end is the rise of distressed communities where stress, crime, and emotional safety is at risk as well, which is why so many of these underground bunkers are being built, because when people become frustrated, can you imagine the madness running through the streets? Right, the loss of water and electricity. We're seeing this already, where people are saying where the data centers are built, the water is becoming sludge. Their water pressure has gone down. The amount of electricity that is being used, by these data centers that are literally running our lives right now, only to get more complex as they go along.
Well, how are we going to improve the infrastructure, right?
Right.
How do we improve the infrastructure? How do we make sure that people don't fall into such deep poverty that it's unrecoverable? How do we close the skill gap to make sure that we can adapt to this industrial revolution while also thinking how to mitigate some of its worst impacts? These are the things you have to hear your politicians talking about in the next 2 to 3 years. And you have to know as much or more as they do so that you can go deeper with them. So they can't just give you a quick talking point and you go, oh yeah, he said he's going to mitigate AI. No, what does that actually mean?
Right.
How do you mitigate the water pollution, air pollution? How do you make sure that our infrastructures can maintain it? We're not seeing rolling blackouts in our cities, right? Like, how are you going to make sure that kids who are already not graduating and right now in the last 5 years have been graduating and getting careers in STEM, right? Remember that whole push into STEM? Like how are we doing against that? How are we going to be doing against that in 5 years from now? Like, we have to be on it. We have to stop complaining about the moment and prepare for the future.
Someone said China has a data center beneath the ocean.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, they're the ones to watch. I'm telling you. Wow. Ha! China is putting data centers in the ocean to keep them cool. China is pulling ahead the rest of the world into sinking data centers that power AI into the ocean as an alternate way to keep them cool. My God.
Like, it makes complete sense.
Yes, but then we also have to take a look at what's happening around the world in terms of climate control. You have all these hot bubbling data centers in the ocean, right? There's flooding, amazing flooding happening all around the world. No one's talking about climate control and how we've destroyed our ozone layer. And so all of this is happening at one time. Let me read what Monica says. I'm trying to allow this to enlighten my mind because I want to understand. I want to stay connected with my adult children because they speak like Chris. It's scary, but I'm open to learn. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that we have to keep having these conversations because people are not really listening. We're talking about everyday things, yes, but we're not looking towards the future, which has been to our detriment. And so Laura says, yes, once a month would be great to have her. How can I don't Chris is not online, child. Chris is doing the work. Chris is doing the AI stuff. He sends me all these things to read. My brain sometimes feels like it's going to explode talking to Chris because I'm like, what level of hell are you sending me into? But it's teaching me to learn, right? It's true, Chris, to embrace, because remember when you first talked to me about AI, I was like, sorcery.
Your journey is incredible. You didn't want to hear it.
Nope, did not. And I said, you must be out your damn mind, and it's going to take over everything. And now I am learning. I've embraced it because I want to be able to tell people what is coming in front of us. We can't just live by the moment.
Tell you what was the shift for you? When did it become like, I got to stop fighting this, I'm going to give it a shot? Like, do you remember what was said or what happened or where you were?
I write reports all the time. Mm-hmm. And I would spend hours writing because I love to write. I then one day wrote all the things that I wanted to put into this report, one particular report, shoved it up into AI, and what came out in 15 seconds, I said, holy mother of pearl. And here's the thing about AI. What you put in is what you get out. So you can tell if someone really wrote this thing based on the content that you get back out. So you can't just say, write a report about blah, blah, blah. You got to give it data. You got to say, I need the data on this particular thing. I need the statistics on this particular thing. This is what I experienced while, working with this client, etc. And it has completely changed my life. Mm-hmm. And then I began digging a little deeper and finding out how involved AI is in our everyday life. And I realized not only is this thing here, it's taking over everything. And if I want to be at least within the margins of understanding what's happening, I can't stay over on the side and say this thing is the devil, which I told you was the devil.
I will consider myself, when I think about the continuum of AI and where I sit, what I consider myself an expert in, it would be considered AI augmented thinking, which is to say that AI can be a tool to help take your creative, strategic thinking to the next level. It can help you identify patterns. It can help you do deep research. It can help you write out. It can be a thought partner. It can talk to you and help you get out your ideas. It can frame them in a way that's digestible and articulable to other people. So again, there's the far end of the spectrum, which are these deep fakes, which are going to happen in this election. It already happened, right? Where you're not going to be able to determine what's real information, what's a news report, and what's not. So that's going to require us to be even more media literate, to check multiple sources before we share something or get outraged, to really read things through and see if it is, like, look for tells. You can still tell currently, but yesterday I saw one of my favorite personalities on television. He's a WWE guy, but he has a creative agency on the side in New York called Looking for Larry, and he helps clients create viral content. He debuted a ad for a tequila company that was, it was so cinematic, it was so beautiful, and not one single human being or camera was used to make this commercial. Right? They already have, like, I think with the AWS, Amazon Web Services, clients can go in and give a prompt and say, I want to make a commercial and I want to show a woman in her house struggling to clean dishes, and then she takes this thing and the dishes come clean, and she should look like this. And they can make a 30-second commercial without ever having
30 seconds.
Right?
30 seconds. So that displaces people in marketing. It displaces, right.
It displaces actors.
The actors,
editors.
Yes. It's crazy. Monica says, I don't want to be like my parents. Everything was a devil. Past 1970, I will at least understand the conversation and not shut down. And J.I. says, we just watched a Netflix movie, Subservice, which is about a family that purchases a robot to be the nanny of the family. It speaks to a lot of what we're talking about. There are robots running around in California, right? They're trying to get us to be, engaged, the non-human driving cars. So Uber, all of that is about to shift and change, right? So the humans that were using Uber, robots are going to deliver your things. Amazon.
Years ago, they were debuting and piloting those self-driving cars in Philly.
Yes.
Would you get in a self-driving Uber? Honestly, like if an Uber pulled up and nobody was in the front seat, would you get in?
I would say, I rebuke you in the matchless name of Black Jesus.
Would you get in the airplane that was a self-driven airplane?
I don't know, Chris. I don't. DT's for Life says, nope, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Someone asked, and this is the question. AI gives me hold on. With the possibility of 60 to 70% of jobs eliminated within the near future, what jobs should we focus on going forward?
That's a great question. It's interesting because when I was growing up, we would frame blue collar jobs as something to look down on. Teachers would say, "Oh, go get a job. You're going to be a trash man in your life, or you're going to be a plumber." Those are going to be the jobs you can't automate. Those are going to be the jobs in the blue collar work. You're going to see blue collar jobs where white collar work is starting to lose, whether you're a paralegal, whether you're a strategist, whether you're a coder, whether you write marketing copy or press releases, or whatever. You don't need those things. But you're going to need a plumber. You're going to need a carpenter. You're going to need an HVAC technician. You're going to need people who fix the roads. You're going to need people who know how to paint houses and fix electricians. You're going to need mechanics. And so while these might not be glamorous jobs, they will become the among the last to automate. And so you're seeing a white collar bloodbath happen. And all you hear about in business trade publications is the white collar bloodbath that's happening as a result of AI. You don't hear about that in blue collar work.
Yeah.
Right? You don't hear about that in police officers, people who fix bridges. But we used to look down on that kind of work. So everything changes. The pendulum keeps swinging.
Yeah.
And so the pendulum is going to swing in favor of blue collar work. The challenge is, though, you can't proliferate blue collar work the way that
Monica says she's not getting. She's like, I'm not getting in there. No.
Let me be clear, Monica. I'm not getting in it either. I'm not getting it either.
Really, Chris? For all your talk about AI, you're not going to get it. All right. So here's what I'd like us to do. Let's order one together and getting it together and record our experience. That would be great.
Experience will bring me back to salvation. That would be my pathway to redemption and repentance.
Yes. Listen, I gotta go. I am now super duper late because it's 7:52. You see what you do? So
I saw the invitation. It was like it was funny because this morning I saw the invitation. It says from 7 to 7:20. I said, "Who thinks I'm going to be talking to Andre until 7:20?"
No, not a soul on earth. Not a soul on earth. And so we'll do this. It's now August 8th, so September 8th. We'll come back to having this conversation as long as it's not on a weekend. And I'll reach out to my producer and let him know that this is what we're doing. I am starting to
2027. Make sure
I know, Chris. I looked it up.
Read it, take it in, discuss it with your family. Like some of the ways to get over this hesitancy is just to start talking about it with your family and friends.
Yes.
Start to understand their attitudes around it. Start to be inquisitive about why they feel this way. Look up some of the lectures. Yes, some of it is scary. That doesn't mean you put your head in the sand and just ignore it. It's not going to go away just because you ignore it.
Yeah, that's true. Open Brain focuses on AIs that can speed up AI research. They want to win the twin arms of races against China, whose leading company will call DeepSeek and their U.S. competitors. The more of their research and development R&D cycle they can automate, the faster they can go. So when Open Brain finishes training Agent 1, a new model under internal development, it's as good at many things, but great at helping with AI research. By this point, finishes training is a bit of a misnomer. Models are frequently updated to newer versions, trained on additional data, or partially retrained to patch some weaknesses. When I tell you they're moving at the speed of sound, and we give them a lot of that information just from our everyday living and using these things that we use every day.
And this is why it's so hard for government to regulate, because by the time you create a session and legislation, the technology has already been outpaced. There are things that you can do today with AI that you could not do in January of this year.
Yep.
There are going to be things you can do with AI in December that you can't do now. That's how fast this is moving.
Yeah, it is. Chris Norris, always a pleasure. Always. I'll see you in a month. If something happens at the end of the world before that, I'll call you. We'll have the dialogue. Whoo! Thank you
You
so much,
guys.
my brother. Have a good one. Bye-bye. This episode of Mornings with Mother is officially over. I am Andrea Lawful Sanders. And yes, y'all, we keep saying this. We're not just having regular old conversations every day. Everything we do here makes you think and be more thoughtful about what you're doing. Thank you all, Money Shots. I see you. He says, hey, love the show. Keep up the amazing work. Chris, goodbye. We will continue to have dialogue that are thoughtful and inspiring and make us think in a way that we can shift as fast as we can in this ever-changing society that we are in. We cannot spend all of our lives moaning and complaining about what's in front of us. We've got to look towards the future. I am Andrea Lawful Sanders. I'll see you when I see you. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.